So that also reduces the beneficiary size.
Let's talk some more about what aid is and isn't going into Gaza at the moment. I'm joined by Jeremy Konyndyk. He's the president of Refugees International. Jeremy, thanks for being with us here. We're in a ceasefire. There are agreed levels of aid, yet as we've just heard there, Israel is not letting in that agreed level of aid. Just what are the agencies on the ground able to do at the moment?
Well, they remain very restricted. They do have greater freedom of movement within Gaza than they had when the war was actively being fought, both because obviously there is a lot less violence now, although there is still violence. There still have been occasional Israeli military strikes inside Gaza, even after the ceasefire was declared. But more importantly, very little aid is able to get in right now. So even though they have some greater freedom of movement and don't have to coordinate each and every movement that they take in advance with the Israeli military, they are not getting the level of aid flow to be able to really capitalize on that newfound flexibility.
What impact is Israel's continued refusal to work with UNRWA on this, the UN Refugee Relief Works Agency for the Palestinian people?
It is a significant problem. The UN, and particularly UNRWA, are the largest aid actors inside Gaza. UNRWA has the most capacity of any organization inside of Gaza, something on the order of 13,000 staff, vastly larger than any of the other aid organizations. And traditionally, many of the other UN agencies and NGOs have relied on UNRWA's operational infrastructure, their trucks, their warehouses, things like that, to store and move and distribute a lot of the aid that they bring in. So when Israel is doing everything they can to try and box UNRWA out, it is definitely an obstacle. What we, I think, have seen is other UN agencies and other NGOs trying to step up and trying to do some of those roles. But, realistically, they are still, by necessity, working very closely with UNRWA.
If people are still starving, desperate, malnourished, without enough adequate access to food, water, medical aid and so on, does that jeopardise the success of the ceasefire plan?
It certainly could. The basic premise here of the plan was an aid for hostages formula. That has been mostly fulfilled. One of the complaints that Israel has lodged against Hamas is that they are being too slow to return some of the bodies of deceased hostages. That doesn't really hold up. Even the International Committee of the Red Cross has said very clearly that this is a huge, difficult job that is going to take weeks to recover some of those bodies who are, in some cases, buried in the rubble of Israeli airstrikes. So it does put another degree of jeopardy on the overall deal. But the other, and maybe as large a problem there, is simply that there is a famine going on. There have been 2 years of war and deprivation and aid obstruction, and so the population there is in an extremely dire state. In addition to famine having been declared in August, winter is approaching. Winters are quite cold in Gaza. Last year, during the winter, children were dying of hypothermia because of they were so exposed to the elements. So it really will cost lives if aid does not flow as it was envisioned in the deal. And I think it is really vital for the U.S. and some of the other countries that are the major backers of this deal to put a lot more pressure on the Israelis to begin living up to their side of the bargain.
Okay, Jeremy Konyndyk, President of Refugees International. Thank you for joining us here on BBC News.
Thank you.
European